My name is Alina Adams. I was born in Odessa, USSR. I wrote 2 books set in the Soviet Union. My daughter was born in America. I'm going to tell her about the Soviet experience through books. This week, we have another nonfiction book, and here's where it gets fun. It's a nonfiction book about books. So it's like a matryoshka, like a nesting doll. The book is Soviet Born, The Afterlives of Migration in Jewish American Fiction. And what's cool is that the author, Karolina Kasuska, she mentions some of the books that we've already covered. She mentions The Patriots by Sana Krasikov. She mentions Lara Wapner's short stories, and we just did her Divide by Zero, her novel. And she mentions Maria Kuznetsova, who was actually the very first novel that we did when we started this channel. So we have a very similar frame of reference. So this book has already taught you something, because when you were looking over my notes, and yes, we do take notes. We are delightfully spontaneous. Yeah, we could, some of the stuff we write, we wouldn't script, definitely. Even though we are spontaneous, I do take notes. And when you looked at my notes, I believe you went, Soviet Jews are only 10% of American Jews? Why were you so shocked?
Because where do the rest of them come from? Like, in my frame of reference, maybe it's just a warped New York vibe, but like, everyone's a Soviet Jew.
No, they're not. Well, here's the thing. First of all, let's not forget the Sephardic Jews. So
yeah.
that's you're like, yes, I don't, but I'm not counting.
Yeah, I'm not counting those. Those are like, they're different. Like, yes, there's Sephardic Jews and then Soviet Jews.
No. So I actually think the largest number of Jews in America came from Germany. And then you have the Russian Jews who came over again at the early part of the 20th century when it was still Russia. But that's the whole thing. Russian Jews aren't Soviet Jews. Soviet Jews, because, you know, when we talk about this, the Soviet Union was a tiny, tiny historical period. It looms so large in all of our lives, but really we're talking about from 1918 to, was it 1989, 1991, depending on when you believe things really fell apart. So the Soviet era was really, really short. Here's actually a phrase that comes up in Soviet Born that I'd love to get your opinion on. And the phrase is inherited memory of communism. What does that mean to you?
I mean, that's so valid, bro. Like,
I'm sure that's exactly what the author was thinking as she was writing it. She was hoping, I hope the readers will think, that's so valid, bro. But why is it so valid, bro?
I mean, that goes back to a lot of just like, in a video we did a long time ago, or maybe, I don't know. But we talked about how this like fear of like repercussions like constantly, and I feel like that's like the biggest like communist effect, I guess, like I've experienced in my own life, that you're very like...
Do you feel like in some way, cultural memory or whatever you want to call it, you experienced it too?
No, I wasn't born yet.
Well, that's fascinating, because here's another note that I have, which is your Sovietness depends on whether you came as a child or as an adult. And you see that in a lot of the writers that are now writing Soviet Jewish fiction. There's a big difference, those who came before, and even by child, I would say like before 12, and those who came as teenagers and up, which I found very interesting. A lot of the Soviet Jewish literature that she mentions in her book is written by people like me, who came as children. I wonder if, this is getting a little overly philosophical, but why not? I wonder if it's because those of us who came in children were sort of filling in experiences that we didn't have, whereas those who came as adults have more concrete experiences. For Soviet-born writers, Eastern Europe is real. It's not a magic fantasy place of American Jews, is another observation that the author makes. Because so many American Jewish authors, it's not even a memory, their sense of Eastern Europe is from their grandmother, who came over after the 1905 pogrom, which is also something that was mentioned in your Great Jewish Book series. So their Eastern Europe they even use the expression, the old country. Like, I've never heard anyone of my immigrant generation use the phrase the old country, but so it really is, it's mythical almost in a way. It's a place of Baba Yaga and all sorts of places that it might as well be a fairy tale, whereas for those who actually came over from the Soviet Union, it's an actual harsh place, it's not a magic place. And one more thing is this big division, at least one that I've noticed, between American Jews and Soviet-born Jews is we love to quote the movie Annie Hall, it's a very old movie. It's from the past. It's from 1977. It's a Woody Allen movie. And there's one scene where he meets his future wife, who's played by Carol Kane, who was the old lady in Kimmy Schmidt, just to give you some reference. And she's very funny. Love Carol Kane. But he basically says to her, oh, I absolutely know you. Jewish socialist summer camps and red diaper babies. And he does this whole thing. And she says, thank you. I love having my life turned into a cultural stereotype. But if I may, I found that to be very true, because most American Jews grew up in this very heavy Jewish socialist democratic milieu, whereas those who came up from the Soviet Union are not enamored of socialism, which very much is also not a magical fantasy land for them, but a real place. And that, I think, is actually the critical distinction between traditional Jewish American writers, whatever they may be, and Soviet Jewish writers.